first of all, thank you so much for having me today. It's really great to be involved as a sponsor and for you to spend the next half an hour with me. So my name's Ashley Hever. I have been with Enterprise now 22 years. I joined on the graduate scheme out of university, working in our Loughborough location. Bit about me, my background. So I was born and raised Irish Catholic, very strict background. I went to Catholic school, did the altar boy thing, and grew up in a pub for 20 years. At school, probably didn't have the best experience. I think, especially at secondary school, it was,
Tough.
I always knew I was a bit different, but kind of never really knew why, if that makes sense. And yeah, so I was badly bullied at times, both by fellow students and even by the teachers on occasions. That was always quite good fun. So roll forward, I went to university, was the first in family to go to university, got a 2-2 in criminology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Made some amazing friends who I'm still friends with today, 30 years later. And I couldn't find a job. I just did not know how to get a job when I left university. I went there, probably enjoyed myself a bit too much, and didn't know, I didn't set foot in the career service, didn't really do anything. So, and back in those days, if you didn't go to, and it's still argued today, if you didn't go to a Russell Group university and you didn't come out with a first or 2-1, you were going to be in a bit of trouble to try and find a graduate job. So worked in the pub for a year, then worked in a bank for a couple of years, and then just saw a graduate job in Loughborough. My brother had just recently got rejected, so I was quite competitive, and I thought, I'm going to get that job, and did get the job. So yeah, worked, hated cars, took me 5 times to pass my driving test. The only thing I knew about cars was probably the colour. So yeah, so that was that. And then I've worked, as I say, with Enterprise for 22 years. Ups and downs. It's been, it's hard work. It's been tough, but I've been mobile, moved around the country, worked up into operations. So I've been store managers in Leicester, Kings Lynn. I had the pleasure of working in Norwich for 3 years. And then moved down to our head office in Egham around 15 years ago, and have been looking at talent acquisition from then on. Outside of work, I am married, live in Surrey, got 2 dogs, 3 chickens, and an obsessive Leicester City fan. So last night wasn't great. And then I'm waiting for a text message today to confirm if we've exchanged on our house sale. So it's an exciting day.
It is colourful. So in terms of, let's stick to the last 15 years, kind of getting in the talent acquisition, what was it like then recruiting, and the diversity of recruiting versus what you see now, which I know is a big leap forward? Yeah,
so when I first joined, I did teach recruitment regionally, so I worked in a regional office, and back then it was very much, you sent a CV, you may have got a photo on the CV, you were praying to get a CV in the likes of Kings Lynn or Corby or those sort of areas. It was very difficult, you were putting your newspaper ads in on a Wednesday at the last minute to get it at the cheapest price for the Thursday Leicester Mercury. And it was, there was no real tracking, there was no databases, there was no candidate management or candidate relationships tool. And it was all very, very manual, and you would literally just track the CV and which branch they were going to for, where they wanted to work. So that was kind of how it was. And then I joined and they opened a position because they wanted to automate it a bit more. So we brought in our applicant tracking system, which is called iSIMS, which is a great system. And now everything in there, and it's grown over the years. We've enhanced it. So at first it was just, okay, let's get our application, make it simpler, easier, more efficient. And then over time, what we've been able to do is add a lot more things to it. So gosh, it must be about 10 years ago, we started adding demographic questions in there. And I think we're a little bit ahead of the time when it came to that. So people were able to put in gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation. And then we added, again, I think ahead of the time as well, around socio-economic background as well. So we have all of this data, and what I've seen change over the years is that I think 10 years ago, people were very cynical and very sceptical about why you were asking for this information.
Okay,
and we were
from a negative viewpoint.
Yeah, from a negative viewpoint. It was like you didn't want someone because they were maybe different.
Okay.
But I think through education, through a lot of employers really talking about it, through DE&I being spoken about a lot in recruitment, early careers and the media, has changed that, I suppose, cynicism as to why people are asking those questions. And over the past 5 years, I've probably had 2 people come back to me to say, I don't want to give you that information, and why are you asking it, compared to around 60-65% of people are completing that information. So it's really allowing us to sort of figure out, okay, is our strategy working? Are we attracting the right candidates? What do we need to work on? And helps us look at, have we got bias in our process somewhere? Have we got hiring managers that are just making bad decisions, or we need to educate more or give evidence to say this was your pool to start with. Yeah. This is what your employee base or your offers look like today.
Almost like a funnel through as to why.
So the funnel as to exactly as to why we're at that. And and it really gives us a big focus on what we need to look at, and what's our starting point. We're very much a promote from within company. I think a lot of people hopefully know that. So everything that we do at entry level, at the front end, is really dictating what our employee base looks like, or what it's going to look like, or what the future leaders are going to look like in 5-10 years' time.
So I think what you're saying in a way is data's the start point of it. So to collect the data that will then allow you to work out through that funnel as to maybe where there's certain talent pots that are dropping out.
And we use that data as well. We've recently just had the most updated census, and it's like, okay, we may think we're doing a great job in our, in our call centre from an ethnicity perspective, but it's then looking deeper into that and going, okay, have we done certain attraction strategies in certain parts of the country? And if you just look at that number as a whole and don't start then splitting out what percentage of our workforce who are home working, who are working, within that call centre role, where are they based? So if they're based in Leeds or Bradford, should our number from an ethnic minority piece be greater than maybe somewhere like Cumbria or Aberdeen? So it's using the data that the government, we're able to provide through the
census. And reflecting the community. In theory.
Totally.
As to where we're at. Okay. And then in that 15 years as well, what's the journey been like culturally for Enterprise?
Yeah.
And for the people, what would they have seen then, I guess, versus now in terms of doing
so when I joined Enterprise, I was not out. I was living a straight lifestyle, personally, professionally, just everything. And I did that up until, 8 years ago when I was 40. So I was coming into work every Monday thinking, right, what did I say I was doing at the weekend? So nobody's going to ask me or question what, I had that many uncles and aunties that I was visiting. It was a joke. But I was so worried and petrified of anybody finding anything out about me. And
because of what was the fear?
Because nobody knew I was gay.
But what was the fear of?
Because I could not get those words out of my mouth.
Okay.
And I also, at that point in Enterprise, there was no real role models within the business. There was nobody that you could look up to and go, okay, I could see myself being that person, or I can find that person to be a peer mentor or a mentor, or I can pick up the phone, or there's a network that I can join, maybe even anonymously, to talk about. And we'd done it wasn't as if the company hadn't done the training, but there was something that we just didn't have people within the business who I could look at and go, that person's similar to me. And there were so many times where I was like, do you know what, it's just easier for me to leave and find another job working within an industry that maybe I can go in and be myself from day one. And I think that has kind of And there's loads of people within your business like that maybe today, or have been in the business, or new talent coming in. If you're bringing in apprentices at 16, or grads at 18, or placements, or anybody at any age, they may feel that it's easier for them to leave from a retention perspective if you haven't got the right culture within that business. So to cut a long story short, I came out and it was the easiest thing I ever did at work. It was embarrassingly easy, but it was like, so, it was
so
nice.
The business embraced it.
The business totally embraced it. And so what we've done, if we fast forward today, we've got an amazing network for, particularly, I'm talking about LGBTQ pluses. It's called Enterpride. So it took us a long time to think of that one,
wow.
Sue.
Did you come up with it?
Maybe. And we've just had, so it's really grown both from employees being involved and engaged in it, as well as allies, and we've just been able to grow it. And my whole goal was that I didn't want people to have to go maybe through what I went through. And it's not, and I was like, it's great to have someone at director level who's gay and who's been relatively successful and who can make change within the business. But a placement or an intern or apprentice wants to see someone that maybe is at that next level or is in a first stage of management or, works in a different role. Yeah, and it's just they can walk in and be themselves and authentic from day one. So that's been a real goal of mine within Enterpride, and just ensuring that we also understand who it is, who we have working for us, and that people feel comfortable giving us that information. So 2 years ago, 80% of our employee workforce didn't tell us what their sexual orientation was. So we didn't have a clue. 80% didn't tell us. So we looked at it, and again, it was like, this was through Workday, which is our HR system. And it was like, well, how can we make change, or how can we start, making new policies, or saying our workforce needs this because this is the percentage of people that, that are working with us. So it was really important that this wasn't an HR initiative, because it's then just seen to me sometimes, okay, they're ticking the box, or Big Brother's watching us, or they're doing it for X, Y, Z reason. So as a network, we really worked hard with all the regional leads around the country to get them to understand not just what it was, but how to do it, but the reason why, and why it was really important that we knew the makeup of our employees. And, today we're at, I think it was as of yesterday, 76% of our employees have given us that information from a sexual orientation perspective, and over 80% for disability, which again both help us grow as a business and allow us to set our right strategies, etc. within that. But the best piece about all that data we collect is that only, I think it's less than 1.5% don't want to tell us, which shows that maybe we've got that culture there where people do feel comfortable about telling us that.
We're not a small company.
We're not small, we're fairly big. But, 1.5%, it's more than I'd like it to be, because I want everybody to do it, but, there's going to be people like me still in the business who just don't want to, or don't.
A switch from 2 years ago.
Yeah, amazing switch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and interestingly, at lunch I was speaking to people, they knew you were coming on, and I was saying Enterprise has always been seen as a bit of a leading light in terms of DE&I. If I think pre-COVID, you did the diversity conferences every year, and I think has been a real champion for it. And although we might think 8 years ago you were sat there perhaps worried about coming out there and saying it's the easiest decision to make, the business, what you're saying, is supported all across that journey. Yeah,
it's really supported it. It's invested in it. We did, we do over 20 to 30 prides a year, I think. Then again, that shows to us that, okay, they're not just doing London, Brighton, Manchester. We're really trying to get involved in the local communities. It may be that you've got employees that are based in Scotland, and it's difficult for them to get down to London or to Brighton to show that support. So we really do try and make sure that we're involved in all of the events in our local communities as well, and give our employees an opportunity. And that also helps us, we spoke a lot about hybrid workforce or home workers. How can we engage that group of individuals that maybe are not having that day-to-day interaction in the office, And so we really encourage everybody to get involved in those. Doesn't matter what part of the business you're from. So if you're working on our claim centre in Leeds, you can support that Leeds Pride event that we do.
Yeah, amazing journey, and really interesting. In terms of across industry, we looked at the CIPD report in the 2022, and there's some facts that's kind of come up on here that we just want to talk through. As to what's happening out there. So, and there's a link within the app as well to the survey for anyone that wants it. So they interviewed a couple of thousand businesses about DE&I and then came out with some findings on it, which is what we're just going to have a look at on here. So under half of employees surveyed have either a standalone I&D or action plan in support of their wider organisation strategy. Half. Why is it half? Why is it not everybody?
I don't know. I mean, some of it, obviously, I think, most people in this room, I think we're quite lucky that we work maybe for a lot of large companies who kind of get it. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example, which it's been really tough over the past 30 days or 2 months. So my husband works for a small business, and through social media stalking, not through yourselves, but
not you, Susan.
Not you. They found out he was gay, and he'd never told them he wasn't out and open in this particular job. He'd been there 7 years. Got a call one day. We no longer want you to work here. And
that's in 2023.
That's in 2023, and so it's transpired that through a lot of different things that it was to do with him being gay, and that's what's transpired. So. I think there's a lot of work we need to do, and I work really closely with our procurement, with our sales team to really try and help, a lot of our suppliers, and work in partnership with a lot of our suppliers to try and work together to really look at how can we use our experiences as a business to really help educate and understand why the importance of having a strategy.
Is it an education piece, or is it a lack of commitment?
In that CIPD report, it's really worrying because employers now are investing less and they're putting less in, or it's not part of their strategy for the next 5 years as it was for the previous 5 years. So. It's, we as a business decided we're not going to pull back on it, we're actually going to invest in it. And is it because of investment that they've not got anything in place anymore, or they're not planning to have anything in place? But that's really worrying from when you look at it from a business, because to me today, if I was to leave enterprise or something happen, that's one of the first things that I would look at as a business. Do they have something in place that I can feel that I can be involved in, or I've got colleagues that I've got, I can go to a Pride event and do things like that. So
say there was a business in here today that didn't have a standalone I&D strategy or action, but was wanting information as to how to form, to get the education piece.
I think
where'd you go?
There's loads of stuff. I mean, that CIPD article, which I think you're going to have everyone, you're going to share that as well, or it's there available. There's some great stuff in there, but you can't do everything at once. You can't decide, right, we're going to try and do the whole thing. So from a recruitment perspective, it could be just, we're going to do a couple of things just from an attraction piece. So let me put my job description through a gender decoder. Is it, can we say that we're doing that? Just something simple that tells you your job is likely to attract more men than women based on the words you're using in that job description. Could you make sure that you're not going to have 55 qualifications that a candidate's got to have? We know, the data tells us if a man's got 3 or 10, they've practically got the job already. Yeah. So, it's those sort of things that you can do that are not going to cost a lot of money. It shouldn't take a lot of time to do that, but it can be just really, really simple things. If you're doing interviews, let's make sure that it's a diverse panel on the interview, so you're getting different thoughts. It may be great to have senior leadership. If you're looking for a senior manager and you're requesting to have diverse candidates, but if that diverse candidate comes in for the interview and it's three men or white men doing the interview, what are they thinking? So it's, they're just some simple, really quick, easy things that I think you can do straight away on that.
Okay, and it'd be good if this time next year that 48 was a 98.
98,
I think we'd like to see. So we'll try and campaign a bit for that. CIPD report also says 21% of employers agree that senior leaders just pay lip service to IND in their organisation. That's shocking.
Yeah, because of course it's shocking. Yeah, because again, this all leads to retention. If that's what employees or employers are thinking, especially it's HR that have probably completed some of this, this survey. It's like, you've got challenges as a business, both attracting, both developing, and retaining your diverse talent. And if that's your number, then that's just the HR people. So imagine if you start then going down layers within entry level or people at different stages in their career, then you're gonna have a few issues.
And actually, it's not rocket science. Back to where you said you thought you would leave. It was the easier thing to do. And I think that if we're almost cutting out talent pools by not being diverse ultimately, because we're kind of saying you're not welcome or potentially not welcome.
And this is. Yeah, it is, and you're going to. And we've spent a lot of time today, and we've spoken about different aspects of DE&I, and there's been a lot of discussion around mental health, and I know there's some stats around what employers are really focused on as well. But the key thing to me is how do we bring it all together? It's this intersectionality of DE&I, and how does mental health work with LGBTQ? How does gender partner with LGBTQ? And
the combination
of it all together. So, different things that we've done is that if we knew it was Mental Health Awareness Week, and we had our Enterprise Network work with our Thrive Network to look at, because we know that there's more suicides amongst gay men. So it's like, how can we bring the two together? Because just because I'm gay, it doesn't mean that I haven't got mental health issues as well. Or
it's not segmented, is it?
No, and we do a really good job of everyone looking after their own little area and working on that. But what are we doing as businesses to bring that together? And my thing when I look at that senior leadership piece is that we've seen a lot of, at Enterprise, all of our senior leaders are responsible for a strand of DE&I, and they lead on it. We've introduced questions on the job application, on the job description for internal jobs. There's a section now within the actual interview process, and we just make sure that, especially at the senior leader piece, that this is why this person got promoted as well. What have they done from a DE&I perspective? What have they done in their local community? Because it's really important. And our senior leaders are now, it's not just about them within the workplace, but it's like, with their children, the amount of leaders that I've had going, do you know what, my son's just come out as gay and I have no idea what to do. Where can you signpost me to? And again, they're mentoring people within the business. Or we spoke earlier about the external mentoring piece. I had a senior leader come to me the other day and go, a young girl I'm mentoring through Bridge Builders has just come to me and said she thinks she's trans, and I am not sure what to do about that. So I think sometimes it's natural involvement that is now allowing them to really understand how important it is in the workplace. And we just make sure that, it's pretty much, if you want to be a senior leader, this has got to be something that is important to you.
It's part of the DNA, has to be. And those stats that we just mentioned, actually, so it's saying most common areas that employees focus on: mental health at 30%, race, ethnicity, I can never say the word.
Race and ethnicity.
23%, and gender at 21%. A lot of areas missing though, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a lot of areas. I think, disability is a really big area. You've got social mobility, which is, I also do a lot of work around that particular area. I think you look at some of what we've spoken about today, and employers have got such a massive part to play and to partner with education to ensure that people, when they leave school, it's maybe right or wrong, but is someone going to benefit more from really understanding around leadership or communication, or backpack to briefcase, we call it, how to get used to the world of work rather than algebra. And, they're not being taught this at school or university. So there's a big role to play, and, especially around that socio-economic, that economic piece. And it's really important that you're visible to it. I know a lot of law firms or some of the big, the Canary Wharf companies, as I sometimes call them, that say, it doesn't matter what university you go to, but if you're not visible at that university, a student isn't going to think, do you know what, I see people like that, like me at that company, so they're just not going to apply to it. So and it's so linked to race and ethnicity as well. The two are really closely linked. So I do think there's, I do a lot of work around that, and speak to a lot of other employers and education around that socio-economic and social mobility piece. And LGBTQ plus isn't on that list either. But to me, if you bring some of this together, it will naturally bring that percentage up and start having some of that intersectionality around it as well.
And I think definitely the message I'm hearing is it's not job done.
No, there's I think we've come such a long way. Don't get me wrong. I think that there's been so many great employers that are really leading the way on this. And, I've had great conversations with lots of different insurance companies, with our suppliers about what they're doing, and, working and just sharing, the Wiser Academy came through conversations with yourself, and we started conversations with someone else called Bridge of Hope, which is really looking at how you get people from that lower socioeconomic background into work, or people that have been in prison or ex-offenders, and working on that as well. So there's so many partnerships or so many people out there that employers can now work with. Yeah. And there's so much data there to really help employers really understand the business reason for this. And that, it is really important. And, the McKinsey data will tell you, and it's widely known that the more diverse a company is, the better, the more profitable it is. And, that Gallup's, we spoke a bit about surveys, and, I'm glad he's gone, because we do the Gallup, we do a Gallup survey, and our engagement score around inclusion is high. But if you're doing it, you've got to, like you said, you've got to try and link it to the business as well. Yeah. And it's got to be look at how does that equate to our customer service score? How does it equate to growth and profitability, and use them together? And then we use that data, and it does need to be individualized, don't get me wrong, because everybody has their own story, everyone has their own background. But I'm able to look at our engagement from, our employees that have said they're LGBTQ, and look at that and try and look at what are we doing, what can we do better. So I agree that you can't just fix everything through, a percentage score that you get once a year, but it gives you some information to start having those conversations.
Absolutely. Okay. So look at the data, see where the pots are that we perhaps are missing out on, understand what talent's out there, and job's not done.
Job's not done. And if you've got role models in your business, just ask them, see if they want to help and get involved, and because it will surprise you how many will do. I mean, we heard about, the branding from Capita earlier, and the number of people that wanted to talk about it. It's amazing just how many people are out, within your workforce that will be able to talk about maybe what it's like to be a carer in the business today, and some of the challenges that brings, or what it's like to be trans within the business, and how, during COVID, and we spoke about make sure your cameras are on, which is a fair comment, but there was an employee that didn't want their camera on for that reason, because they were transitioning through that period. And it's understanding that, and not just making assumptions and saying you need to have your camera on, I don't care, but sometimes there might be a reason for it. Absolutely. And it's very much the language that you use, and I'm really conscious of language that is used within the business. And when someone comes in and they may not have been in the office because they are a home worker, and somebody turns around and said, did you find your way here okay this morning? Yeah. Or, I didn't know you still worked here. That again may stop someone coming back into the office and use the option to work at home. Or You know, I remember me personally, I constantly got the feedback that Ashley's great, he understands his job, but he never speaks in meetings, he never puts himself out there or never puts his hand up to add his opinion. And I went to a Stonewall leadership piece, and it all kind of clicked that when I was at school, I never wanted attention on me, and I never put my hand up, I never wanted to speak, and I never wanted everyone to look at me and just start. So I think that then became, I just did that throughout business, and it wasn't until I went to an external, you know, leadership event that it all kind of clicked, and I was really able to take that and use that as an educational piece to our senior leadership team to go, there's probably a really simple reason as to why someone does do that or why someone doesn't want their camera on in a Teams, but it's all to do with language and having conversations and really trying to get to
individualise again.
Yeah,
James. Exactly. Look at you now. So gone from not putting your hand up in school
to sitting
and
here.
Sharing with
100
odd people today. So really enjoyed that. Thank you very much for being so open and candid.
Thank you.
As I say, the report will be available on the app. It's a good read. There's a summary version as well as a long one, depending on what your appetite is. But for now, thank you very much to Ashley.
Perfect. Cheers. Thank you.